eyesight?
He was kind of that way from when he was just a child. I went to school with him when he was that way. He went back to Minnesota several times to have his eyes checked and doctored and everything, but he just eventually kept getting worse and just finally lost his eyesight. But he maybe a lot of you knew, he wore a real thick pair of glasses at one time. And then they finally got him a pair of contacts. I thought that was real odd, you know, somebody couldn't hardly see having contacts to work with. He lost them a couple of times, and Ron and Carrie had to help him find them, but they found them. Yeah.
My uncle, Orrin Reed, was the teacher, and the nurse came out to check the kids, and they said his eyesight is, Mr. Beehler, his eyesight's bad, so he'll have to buy some glasses. So they told the parents, and they said, we can't afford glasses. So my uncle Orrin, the teacher, bought his first pair of glasses.
The story that we heard was that he was kicked by a horse when they were rounding up some of the horses down on the river. And that's how it started the process of him doing one.
But David was an amazing person. He helped us build a lot of buildings. I mean, put beds on, when we built a lot of our outbuildings, David was there to help. He couldn't drive, he rode his horse down, he was there, but he could help put tin on a building. And I don't know how he could do it, but he did, and he was good help, David was. But he never felt sorry for himself. He was one.
Well, as a kid, he rode that little 8N Ford tractor around. And I always marveled at that. And the other thing is we neighbored him, and Mike and Linda now have his place. It was always a competition to see if we could beat him out to fix the fence every year. And you could never beat him out to fix it. And there was not one staple out ever on that fence. I don't know how he went, and he felt every wire and walked every post. He's marvelous.
How could anybody hit a nail? And I can't figure that out. But he did. He helped us with a lot of things that way.
David used to go by our house, you know, and he would pick up Nathan, we called him Buddy, but he would pick him up not knowingly, because Nathan would spot him and take off with him, and they'd go fencing. And pretty quick, you know, the little guy was catching up with him, and David would come back by the house and say, well, I took my hired hand with me today, Carrie. I'm sorry, we didn't stop in and tell you first. So I don't know how that little short-legged baby could keep up with old David, but he did.
David was my mother's cousin, and when he was getting ready for the centennial last time, he had a riding lawnmower. And he wanted to go out and mow his lawn, and I told him, I said, Dave, I'll mow your grass for you. And, no, I'll do it. And he'd take that riding lawnmower and drive until he hit something. And then he'd back up, and then he'd try it again, and then he'd get right up next to the house and just rub the foundation of the house till he got to the corner, and then he'd run out and rub, so he'd turn and go the other way. And it was great attitude that man had.
At the end, he started using milk jugs with water in them and run the stream between them.
Yeah, he had all kinds of
tricks.
techniques he used. But the other thing that really bothered me one time, and it scared me, he had a buzz saw, and he was cutting firewood. And he'd feel with the back of his hand the blade, the length of the blade, and then he'd measure over in blindness, then move that log over and then run it through. Then he'd put it, he'd feel the blade again. Dave, don't do that.
Those toys on the table, David built them.
Yes.
For a blind man running a saw and cutting as small as he did, doing that, it was unbelievable.
I'm an O'Grady, and David was my dad's best man at his wedding in Washington, D.C. And we just loved David. My brother and I would stop on our way home from school. We went to St. Martin's in Rapid City, and we'd always use his phone to let the folks know that we were almost home in case the weather was bad or something. We called him the mayor of White Owl.
Next up.
That little 8-in Ford, it went swimming in Park Dam. He was down there fencing and it took off on him and ended up in the dam.
Has to be rescued.
Yeah, it had to be rescued.
One more story about Dave, on Pawnee Dam. He always kept his camper down there, and he always made his coffee. Well, my brother, thank God I wasn't there this fishing trip, but my uncles were there, and they asked Larry to go in because the coffee pot went dry. So he went into the camper to get the coffee, and he seen a mouse hole in the top of the lid. He opened it up, and the mouse had made a nest in there, and that's the coffee they'd been drinking all night.
New definition of cowboy coffee.
Yeah, Les. Buddy, my grandson, he's got one of David's 8-in boards, and he mowed these road ditches out there with a lot of it. And then one of them that you gotta kinda, when you're going up the ditch, you gotta get off the seat and lean way forward, or it doesn't move.
I just heard Ray mention shocking grain. How many people here have ever shocked grain off the binder? I mean, I bet lots of, it was the awfulest job that I ever had. I didn't do it after I was 10 or 11, 12 years old, but 6, 7, 8, 9 years old was the ugliest job I ever had, because it was farther than you could see and I had to shock the grain. And I never was on the binder, but I shocked a lot of grain when I was a little tiny guy. So there was a lot of people in there shocking grain.
Well, we're starting to wind, we got one more.